Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. We have a lot of onions growing on our homestead this year, and it's not because I am really great at growing onions. I don't exactly know yet. I have had success growing onions in the past, but I decided to grow 8 beds of onions in my greenhouse just to help me take care of a big problem that I had in here with a nutritional imbalance and a very serious bug problem because of the nutritional imbalance. Crossing my fingers, so far so good. I have seen a few aphids around the greenhouse, but so far it's nowhere near the numbers that we had last year, but we're still not quite into peak season. However, it's time for me to mess with my onions a little bit. And this particular bed I planted with red onions. And when I planted the onions about 2 to 3 inches apart, which is quite close, knowing that later on in the season, which the point that we're at right now, I could pluck out every other onion to give the existing onions or the remaining onions in the bed some more space to bulb out when it became time for that. And I could use the green onions in my cooking. Now I have been doing that throughout the course of the past couple of weeks, but it's really time for me to do a full sweep of this bed and make sure that I get out every other onion for sure. And I'm going to be preserving them mostly in my dairy products. So we have a lot of goats here, and I have sold a couple recently, but I'm still getting about 2 gallons a day, which is quite a lot. It's 14 gallons a week. We have a 6-person family, so we do go through a decent amount of milk, but we don't go through 14 gallons. So I do get to make cheese, I do get to make butter, and both of those things sound really good with some green onion mixed in. Actually, we recently bought, I think it was called a chive herbed cheese from our local Amish store, and it was so good, and I'd like to try that for sure. I've been making the same old Colby cheese for a couple of years now, and I think it's time to switch it up. And I know that when you put herbs or like peppers or something into cheese, they need to be dried first. So really that's goal number 1, is to dry these onions. You can see that they're pretty well packed in here. This end is the one that I have already kind of started to thin, but I need to go out throughout this whole bed and get out every other onion plant. Look at that. Basically just 2 of the rows. I think there's, I don't know, 6 or 7. There we have it, all thinned out. I imagine that once the sun comes out, these guys will start standing up a little bit straighter. They were all kind of leaning on each other as it was. And then here are our spoils. Nice big basket full. Eyes are only burning slightly. I'm surprised. I just let it do its thing. Now I do have quite a few onions left. I've got all the ends here, which have a little red onion bulby bit, and they are dirty. I need to spray them off. And I still have these as far as like the green onions go. And I think I'm gonna put all of this in the dehydrator. Drama. Seriously. I came down and I mixed their feed and then walked away. They're like, where'd you go? I grabbed my pails today. These are my hand milking pails because I sold Breezy and Alara last week. And I'm getting a little bit less than 2 gallons a day. I prefer hand milking, so I'm gonna give it a go. The reason that I have my milk machine at all is because when I milk over about 1.5 gallons every single day for an extended period of time, my bum elbow starts acting up, but I want to see how it goes. If you are new to the channel and you're wondering what's up with this little tiny udder, this is Christine. She hasn't kidded since springtime of last year. She had a single doeling, and I decided to retire her. So she's not making a whole ton of milk. She really never has. And right now she's actually nursing her granddaughter. She's nursing our frenzy girl out of Elpis. And so we're getting a lot less milk than she normally produces, which isn't a lot to begin with anyway. So maybe about a cup and a half is what I can expect. And I'm really only milking her as like a comfort thing for me because I know that she's retired, and when I dry her off, that's it. So we'll see how long I keep it up. I imagine Frenzy is just going to keep nursing her, and it may not end up being worth it, but for now I'm doing it. Where'd you go, woman? Hey. Clover here is a beautiful udder. Just her teats are a little bit small, and I wish they were a little bit more center. So she's a little bit hard to hand milk at first, but once I get a decent amount of milk out, the lower part of her udder will soften, and I can kind of use that as like an extension to her teats, and should go fine. The thing with her is she eats really fast, so hopefully I can stay ahead of her. Also, I'm not super used to milking from this side of the goat. It's awkward for me. I have these two milk stands in my milking area so that when I'm done milking a goat, she can still stay up on the stand and finish her breakfast while I work on the other one. But it's so awkward to milk from this side. I'll get used to it though. Miss Elsa is a dream to hand milk. I can milk her forever. Chizzy's a mini La Mancha out of my goat Elpis, who actually is pretty hard to milk. I don't know what it is. She's got like this chronic edema of her udder that makes her, like, she just does not like to give her milk up, and I don't know if it's her or like her physiology. Her girls do not have that problem though. I just have problems milking from this side. I can tell. I kind of wonder if I need to be like this. That's easier. She's definitely an improvement on her mama. That's for sure. No! Like, lift her up by her udder. It saved the milk. Seriously? It's a tick on my back. I like to break them in half when I'm not where I can stick them in alcohol or something. Ooh, I can feel my hands cramping. Yep, it's been a long time since I hand milked. Actually, really hasn't been that long. A couple of months, probably. But I definitely need to build the strength back up, that's for sure. I brought my 2-gallon canister down with me because in theory it should all fit in there. But the thing is, especially when you're hand milking, there can be a lot of foam that develops on top of the milk. And obviously that foam takes up space in the canister. So the canister's full right now, but it's not 2 gallons full. Shindy still has her daughter Red on her, and Red does take quite a bit of milk, so there's not a lot in here, but I want to get out the excess that Shindy has in here because I do want to put her in the MDGA virtual show this June, so I want her capacity to stay up. I just haven't had the time to like shape her and take pictures of her yet. I do hobble her with the machine. I might have to do it here too. Yeah. I don't love hobbles because it doesn't allow them to splay their legs out super well, so it can be a little bit hard to get a hold of the udder, but her teats are well placed, so she's doing good. Shindy is also an Elpis daughter who is a massive improvement on her mama as far as milkability goes and udder texture overall. probably about 2 gallons of milk with the foam settled out. And for those of you that are curious, it took me 30 minutes. So since I turned the camera on, my camera at this exact moment has been going for 30 minutes and 2 seconds. So not bad. It usually takes me about 35 minutes with the machine, plus cleaning the machine. These pails and things are a lot easier to clean. So hand milking, even though I'm not in the rhythm of it quite yet from lack of practice and lack of muscle memory, I'll get that back and milking will be even faster. That is if my elbows hold up. I hope they do. I fed them this hay, gosh, 3 or 4 days now it's been since I filled this hay up. So we actually might be done feeding hay. We'll see. I like to still have a whole bunch of hay on standby for rainy days and things, but this is a good sign. I normally can't stop feeding hay this early in the year. That ryegrass seems to be doing its thing. Not a ton of buttercup. There's still some. Normally this time of year it's like a whole carpet just full of buttercup. All right. So the onions in the freeze dryer only took 25 hours. Believe it or not, the onions in my dehydrator are still not done yet. I have them set at 125. And what I think I'm gonna do is actually just load the ones that are in the dehydrator on these freeze dryer trays and get the freeze dryer working on those guys too, because they are very, very dry at this point in time. And I'm just gonna go ahead and powder them up right now. I do know that powdering them up gives them some more surface area, so in theory it gives it some more area that could absorb moist air and they might not last as long. I don't think these are gonna last very long anyway. I'm not trying to put these away for like long-term storage. I would love to be able to maybe just not buy any onion powder for the next year or two. Smells exactly like you'd expect. It's not like super powdery. See, it's kind of more flaky. I do have a spice grinder, but I think I'm gonna be okay with this for now. I may stack more in there. What I got was 2 quarts cram pack full of the green onion powder, and I didn't taste it yet. I can't believe I didn't do that earlier. There's a little bit left in the funnel here. Whoa. As is typical of a lot of freeze-dried things that I've made, it is quite drying to my mouth. Like the second I put it in my mouth, it's like it sucks all the saliva out of my mouth. It is an incredible flavor punch that I think is going to be so good in so many applications, and we're going to try to do a couple of those things in this video. Good morning. So I just got off our members live stream, and during the live stream I noticed that I think Margie's in heat, and I do like to pen breed sometimes. Pen breeding is when you put all the goats that you'd like to breed in one pen together, kind of leave them there for a little bit over a month, maybe 2 months, so that you're sure that they were together over at least 1 or 2 heat cycles. But really, I kind of like hand breeding as well. And hand breeding is when you kind of notice that the goat is in heat and you just put the doe and the buck together for a few hours, let the deed happen as long as the doe really is in heat, and then put them back in their respective pens. And if I can do that, it kind of frees up my pens for later pen breeding. And with Margie and Farrell, it's just the 2 of them in the group for fall kitting, and so it might be a little bit easier to hand breed them. All right, wanna go get your boyfriend. We're gonna get more than we bargained for. Okay, I need the big white one. All right, come on. Yesterday it kind of looked like Margie was in a heat, and this morning she was mounting my weather that's over in the girl pen. And so if she's not in a full-blown heat right now, hopefully we will catch her in a full-blown heat over the next day or so, and we'll have some fall mini La Manchas. So Margie, she's an unregistered mini of some sort. She looks like an Oberhasli. And putting Feral over her means I will have a grade mini La Mancha. They have little elf ears. Actually, Gollum, who's over in the buck pen over here, that's Margie and Feral's baby from last year. She had a single buckling. I really want some doelings out of this pairing so that we can get Margie's genetics into my mini La Mancha program. Now, Margie arguably has one of the worst udders in my herd. It sits really low, but she does have a high casein output in her milk. I have tested her hair to find that out. So does Feral. So these will be very cheesy does if we get them. But also Margie, she milks and milks and milks and milks and doesn't lose condition. She does so even with lower quality forage, and Margie is easily one of my best goats as far as parasite resistance goes. So those are the qualities that I really want to bring into the mini La Mancha program, and Feral is how we're gonna do it. So I'll get these guys some water and leave them in here for a while, keep you guys posted. So I can't figure out who's in heat. I don't think it's Margie, at least not a full-blown heat right now. But I just got done mowing the lawn and I noticed that the girls in the girl barn were just jumping all over each other. So I figured someone must be in heat. I decided I was just gonna put all of my fall breeding groups together. All three, it's not a bunch. And there's not a bunch of goats in each group. So I had this shelter sitting here and I decided I would just build a fence around it and put Nefarious and Foxy in here. Hi, ma'am. She seems not super impressed about the whole situation. I know, it won't be for long. But I don't think it's Foxy necessarily that's in heat, but he'll know when she comes into heat and he'll do the job. Won't you, sir? He's interested in the fresh grub. I think these two old birds, Margie and Feral, have settled in for the evening. They're both in the house. Margie loves him. She was rubbing all over him today, so she's either coming off of a heat, coming down from a heat, or coming into one. And then the golden group out here is really loud. You guys are also less than impressed with the situation, aren't you? So we've closed Mooch in here with his three ladies, Winnie, Stormy, and Tempest. And everybody's gold, so all these babies should be gold. We've got quite a lot of flagging coming from Stormy. She doesn't seem particularly enthused about the situation right off. So our earliest due date is sometime in the beginning of October, potentially. We haven't seen any breeding, but I'm gonna mark this date down and watch some butts over the next few weeks. I wanted to stick them together just in case someone was in heat today, because otherwise it's another 18 to 21 days before they come into heat again, and that kind of throws us towards, you know, the end of October. If I could get them sooner rather than later, I'd like to. What do you think, Mooch? These girls are more your size. He bred some La Manchas for springtime. No, he wants out too. Sir. It's okay, ladies. What do you think, Winnie? What do you think, girl? Do you like him? How's it going? Are you okay with the arrangement today? Not so much? I'm sorry. I don't think anyone is in heat. Not any of my Nigis. It's weird, eventually. So today we're working a little bit on putting some of the lane together. This is a planting space that I put together a couple of years ago, and I grew in ground for the first year, and I kind of did it the second year, and this is the third year, and I'm tired of trying to grow in the ground here. We've got a lot of clay soil, and while, you know, clay soil has not been the worst thing for me to grow in, the ground here has been a little bit hard for me to manage the growing spaces, partially because when it is the growing season, our grass is really, really robust, and even with ground cover, it just kind of takes over. Like it'll literally grow over it and through the weed fabric, and to try to pull back the weed fabric to amend underneath of it was quite a chore. The weed fabric doesn't handle it well, and it was just time to bring things above ground. My favorite way to grow is in raised beds, but some of my favorite raised beds, the Birdies beds, have been back ordered, and I can't order them for another little bit, especially with the hefty vet bill that we just got. So I did the next best thing, and I bought some more grow bags for this space. This will be temporary, but these grow bags I can move around, and so I can soup up another space somewhere else when I can put the raised beds here. So these here are the grow bags that I like. I've grown in these grow bags, not these ones specifically, but grow bags exactly like this for about a year now. I've grown some carrots and some melons and some other things. These are the lined grow bag from Epic Gardening, the 15-gallon. I find that this is a really good size to grow a heavy feeding plant in, and if you want to put like a tomato trellis or something in here, it's also a good size for that. See, and the lining on the inside, it's like a felt that's right here. I like that because we do live in a pretty windy, very sunny area, and that's just gonna slow down the rate of evaporation from the soil, and it works well. I am also changing up the soil that I'm using this year. Last year when I put a lot of the raised beds in the greenhouse, I used Kellogg's, and I did like it to an extent, but the way that my plants grew was less than ideal. I did have to do a lot of amending and babying of those plants, and I'm hoping that this soil is different than that. So far so good. I have packed some of my tomatoes into the beds down at the other end of the lane, and we'll go look at those at some point. Maybe not today, but before this vlog ends. And so far the beds that have this soil in it are doing really well, so I'm encouraged. One of the things that is different about this soil is that it comes in 1.5 cubic foot bags. The Kellogg's came in 2 cubic foot bags, so for the Kellogg's, one bag worked to fill one of these. It's gonna take a little bit more than one to fill it with this branch, but that's okay. All right, 13 grow bags set up in the lane, and now we are going to work on the irrigation. This past winter, I set up the greenhouse with this micro tubing irrigation from Grower Solution. I really like it. It's got a little drip port every 6 inches, and it's got this open end that I'm gonna just close up with one of these guys. A little goof plug is what they call it. And we're gonna run this along this part of the lane. Just gonna plug up this end. Don't mind my gardener's hands. Been working today. So there we go. That's gonna stop the flow of water out of the end. And then once pressure builds up in the line, it'll just slowly drip out of these ports. So the idea here is going to be to have this coiled up, kind of like so, in each bag. Just gonna set up a coil here and then use some of these spikes to hold it down. There we go. I've mentioned it before, and it's always a good idea if you can afford to buy 1 or 2 extra of anything that you feel like you might need, whether it be extra bundle of T-posts, extra roll of this stuff, extra anything, extra couple bags of mulch, just in case you think you might need it, because I have never regretted doing that, because I always end up needing it. Case in point, I have 4 or 5 bags left to put the irrigation on, and I ran out of tubing. I had an extra bundle of tubing, so that's great. Now I have another connector to put these 2 together. The last one we used was a plug. This one has to have 2 open ends to connect the tubing. So this is where we ran out. Shove that in there. And then put the new one on. There we go. We're back in business. So over here I have this little piece of mainline tubing just kind of hanging on the fence. What I'm going to do is bring over the hose whenever I need to water the lane, screw it in right here and turn the water on, and water's going to fill this hose, and then it will fill that drip tubing because we are going to connect it, and the lane will get watered. Now I have this hole here that had the old irrigation hooked up to it. Yep, that goof plug is going to fit, so that's good. I'm able to plug up the old hole and make a new hole because this is a smaller tube than what the lane had on it last. Just use another one of those double open-ended connectors. Connected it here. I'm going to make a small hole in this tube. It's not easy to do. There we go. Tiny leak out of there. That's not too bad, but as you can see, we have drippage. That is very good. Sometimes it takes a second for the pressure to reach the end, so we'll just wait for it, make sure it's gonna work. There we go. It's a slow drip right now. It'll pick up as pressure gets in the lines, but it's working, which is great. So that'll just be temporary for this summer while I'm growing things in those bags. Eventually, the whole lane will have drip irrigation set up just like that. But let's go to the beds. So I did have some birds that actually took out the gherkins that I had planted over here. This is the bed that I had Kellogg's and barn clean out in last year, and this is what the tomatoes look like. So they're fine. They're just a little bit sickly looking. Their leaves are a little light colored and they're kind of cupped upward like this. They just don't look super great. Not horrible, but not the best. I have put down some fertilizer for these guys because I feel like they need it. However, over here, these tomatoes look a lot better, and these are actually the same variety, sowed at the same time as those. So these are all Belgian Giants here. Actually, I lied. This is a Dr. Witchy. This is where my Dr. Witchies start. So this is a Dr. Witchy, but this is a Belgian Giant. So this is a fair comparison to what's over there. It looks so much healthier. We've got these over them just to protect them from the birds. I am probably going to hang something over here to help scare the birds away. There's nothing out here but goats, and goats aren't super scary to the birds. And really at a certain point, when the seedlings get big, the birds aren't really gonna bother the plants themselves, but they will eat the fruit. Are you girls getting used to the situation out here? Oh, I'm so excited to be breeding you, Winnie. I know, do my hands stink? I've been working in the garden. She was offended by that. So we're in the messy kitchen today making cheese. I have actually started already. So we've got to the point where I need to be adding some salt, and then we're going to be adding the onion powder. Now I'm noticing since this has been sitting, there's a little bit of whey kind of pooling up. I'm going to dump this little bit of whey off, and then we'll do the fun parts. Now, for the last couple of years, the cheese that I've been making is a Colby cheese. And that is a washed curd cheese. And if you're not a cheesemaker, that doesn't mean much to you, but it's got a few more steps to the process. And the curd ends up being a little bit cooler at the end, and this curd is actually quite warm. What I'm making is called a stirred curd cheddar. And it's really, when you get into cheese making, a lot of the process is quite similar. You just have a change in temperature, and you might have a little bit of change in the process, like washing the curd versus not washing the curd, but a lot of it is really the same. And so I haven't changed a whole ton from what I've been doing before, except for I don't do the washed curd process. And because of that, this is going to have a little bit more acid. So it's going to be potentially a little bit more crumbly, but also it's going to have a lot more flavor. Sometimes washed curd cheeses can tend to lean more towards the sweet side, and I want this cheese to have more of a punch. So all I'm doing is just trying to incorporate the salt throughout, and then we'll add the onion. A lot of cheesemakers will brine their cheeses. I find that it's a little bit difficult to keep up with a brine. Not that I never will brine a cheese, but I prefer direct salting for sure. I'm going to use the greenest part of the onion for this step, the green tops. Not measuring, obviously. See what in there? It smells awesome. Definitely smells oniony. Cheesecloth is going to turn green. The way that comes out of this is going to be a light green. Oh, I'm so eager to try this. I do have to wait a few months though. This is going to have to age in the cheese cave. We'll try the curd though, for sure. I could definitely tell that I sold some goats. I can always tell when I either have added somebody to the milking routine or I've taken someone away, especially when it's clear that they have had a very positive impact on the casein content of the milk or the cheese yield, because this, I used to have cheeses when I was milking Margie especially, where I couldn't fit it all in my cheese press. And now I actually used more milk today than I normally use, and I'm gonna have no problems filling the press today. Some of my goats I have tested for their casein output, and some of them I haven't. Actually, most of them I haven't. But let's try curd, shall we? Oniony curd. A squeaky. Holy moly. This is gonna be great once this has a chance to age. It reminds me a lot of the cheese that we bought at the Amish store, which it should be a lot like it. That was, I think it was a chive cheddar, something like that. This isn't chives, but green onions are close. Look at the whey coming out. That's actually beautiful. Sometimes in between flips on the cheese, I try to come out and do anything random in the garden. And today I came in the greenhouse and saw something really exciting. Hopefully it comes up on camera. There's a mockingbird in here. Clearly these guys are doing nothing now. I haven't moved them around, but I would really like the birds to stay out of here so they don't mess with my praying mantis babies. Can you see it? They're really fast. Oh, come here. I noticed that the little egg capsule that's right here looked like it had some change. You can see there's like this fuzzy chaff. Look, they're all over the place. Look at them. Yay! Come here, say cheese. Good job, buddy.
A string pulled it out.
Who did that?
I, by an accident.
You did it to yourself? Did you tie it to your own tooth?
I didn't tie it. It got stuck in my tooth and I tried to get it off.
Wow. Good job.
Now
Are you gonna save it?
I'm gonna save my tooth.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it.
So many exciting things happening this afternoon. Yeah, that's one of 3 praying mantis egg capsules that are in the greenhouse that I have seen. There's probably more that I haven't seen. And one of them has had the babies emerge, which is great. Good morning. It's time to unmold our cheese. Pretty excited about this one. Also a little bit nervous. This is the first time I will have added any kind of thing into the cheese. Usually I just put salt. It smells really good. It's so interesting. It's almost like a combination of like a yogurty smell with the onion smell. It's gorgeous. So neat. We're gonna have to wait 3 months to try this. I'll probably make several more in the meantime so that we have a lot of it. I can tell I'm gonna love it just by the smell. I had something that I had planned to do today, nothing big, but we're gonna take a break from activities to have a little bit of a chat because I just got the results back from Talia's necropsy. So I talked about, I guess I could back up just a little bit to give people who are new a brief overview. A couple weeks ago, I had one of my adult does pass away, and initially she had presented I saw her one evening stretching her back out kind of funny. And I stood there and watched her a little while, and what she would do is kind of leap forward, hunch her back like goats sometimes do when they don't feel good, but then she'd arch her back real hard. It just looked like something on the inside really hurt. And I took her temperature and it was normal, and it was the evening time. I decided that I would call the vet and take her in for an emergency visit. The vet had all kinds of wild assumptions, which, like, that's what you do, to be honest, with goats. When you really kind of don't know what's going on, you take all these wild guesses. They had originally thought maybe she had urinary calculi. I'm trying to think of all the things that they cycled through, but they thought of everything to include maybe she just had an out of season heat and got a cramp. That's literally what was told me, like one of the suppositions, because they did everything from x-rays to ultrasounds and blood work, and really nothing came back abnormal except for she did have elevated glucose. I think that's important to note because I've seen one piece of literature that has connected what she ended up having with a high glucose level, as well as very slightly elevated or on the verge of being elevated markers for ulcers. I don't know what it is that they look for when they're looking for ulcers, but that's what I was told. Hey, the thing that creates ulcers, it's still within normal range, it's just a little bit elevated, and so we'll treat for that as well. She was given 3 different antibiotics. She was given Baytril and Exceed, and the day after I took her to the vet, I was instructed to give her penicillin, and I did that. So she had that. She had a couple different ulcer medications that were given to her orally. I gave her this CD antitoxin, just in case that was one of the things that we decided we would treat for, just in case those bacteria were present and throwing toxins. And I also had given her some Banamine for a couple of days, which is for pain, and especially in intestinal pain. She had kind of bounced back. She had weird temperature fluctuations at the beginning that were stabilized. She never did eat, and then at the end her temperature fluctuations came back and she really went downhill, and we had her euthanized. Because the vets didn't know what happened, she died even with all of these medications, and I really wanted to know, and I wanted to be able to pass off information to you guys. I took her in for a necropsy to have Murray State look at her, and it took a while. It took a little bit for some of these things to be cultured to figure out the culprit, but essentially she died from a clostridial bloom. And I kind of saw this coming. Now, she did not have classic symptoms of clostridial disease. Actually, they had looked at her kidneys, and her kidneys were fine. Sometimes clostridial disease is called pulpy kidney because it can look strange in the pathology, usually right after death, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have her euthanized so I could bring her in so that anything that was going on could be seen and just wouldn't be part of like natural breakdown if it had been a couple hours or whatever. But yeah, her liver was fine, her kidneys looked fine, but she had necrotizing enteritis. So her bowels were dying because of the clostridial bloom. Now, there are vaccines that you can give for Clostridial infections. It's called the CD and T vaccination. And we decided a while ago that we were not going to be giving that here. And it's very simple. The reason that we don't give it is because there's a preservative in it that doesn't leave the environment. When I had first started with goats, there wasn't a withdrawal time for this medication in goats. I believe there is now. I think they say 2 to 3 weeks, and it's safe to consume the meat. And I think the milk is even faster. So if it's not in the meat and it's not in the milk, where is it? That's a good question to ask, especially when you're homesteading and you're using things like manure in your garden. Mercury is one of those things that does build up in the environment. It does build up in the body, and it's not good in any kind of dosage. And actually, when this compound thimerosal enters the soil, so like it's excreted either by urine or by feces, and it gets in the soil, it turns into something worse. I'm just going to read this for you. In soil, thimerosal, a compound containing mercury, undergoes a process called degradation. Specifically, certain bacteria in the soil can convert the inorganic mercury in thimerosal into a more toxic form called methylmercury. This transformation can lead to the mercury becoming more mobile and available for uptake by plants or other organisms, potentially causing environmental contamination. So there's probably a lot of people asking, well, oh my goodness, you had this goat die of this like preventable disease. Now, I don't believe that anything is 100% preventable, even with the best care and attention and protocols and everything being adhered to perfectly. There really is no perfect system. When I decided that I wasn't going to vaccinate my herd, I knew exactly why, and I knew the consequence. And unfortunately, even with things like the CD antitoxin and all the antibiotics that we threw at Talia, she couldn't be recovered. And that is unfortunate. But what I'm not going to do is then turn around and fill all of my other goats with this vaccination 2, sometimes 3 times a year, depending on how often you need to vaccinate, and just let that populate my land, get into my gardens, and then into my children. There's no goat is worth that. So I have some theories as to why this happened to Talia. Usually it's management. I can acknowledge that. Not just not vaccinating, but overfeeding can cause Clostridial to bloom. Clostridia bacteria is something that is in their gut to begin with, and usually it's at manageable levels. Same thing with E. coli. We actually, I believe humans have both things as well. It's just in the body of a goat, when these bacteria are overfed, really densely nutritious and like lush forages and things, sometimes babies can overeat on milk and have a Clostridial bloom. That's what happens. It's a lot of goodness. You can actually give goats too much of a good thing. And it's not that she, broke into the feed room and got excess feed at all. I was reading that sometimes they can even overeat on lush green pastures. And so, goodness, sometimes maybe it's best to not try to necessarily feed the best. I don't know that me putting the ryegrass out there wasn't part of what did it to her. But I know the other goats so far are fine. I have cut back a little bit on the grain that I'm feeding the rest of the herd. And it was a suggestion given to me by my vet as well as my mentor that, I feed once a day my grain. I feed all of the animals their grain once a day when I milk. I do have some heavy milkers that get quite a lot of grain on the stand in the morning, and maybe that's not a good idea. That I could give them about half of the amount that I feel like they need that one time that I milk, and then later on in the evening I can come out and feed the rest, so that it's not slam packing their systems with all of that nutrition all at once. That can snowball into a problem, and of course we don't want this to happen again. So that's my management shift that I'm making. I have already started to dial back a little bit on the grain that the does are fed, but really I don't know what happened to Talia. She wasn't fed anything extra in the weeks or whatever that before she ended up dying. And so yeah, it's just kind of one of those things that I knew that I would see it on my herd, in my herd one of these days, and we've seen it, and we did all we could, and it was sad, but life moves on. We'll change what we can. But there are some things that I am not willing to budge on, and the CD and T vaccination is one of those things. If they could formulate it with a little bit different of like a preservative, I know that the preservatives in humans, there are multi-dose vaccines that have thimerosal, and then if you'd like, there are single-dose vaccines that do not have the thimerosal. If something like that existed, I would use it. It's literally just because of that preservative. I'm not comfortable with that on my land. That preservative does exist in the CD antitoxin that I gave Talia, but it was one of those situations where that was worth the risk. Giving that preservative to the entire herd multiple times a year, I just can't justify that. Honestly, no judgment with what anyone decides to do on their farm. There's a lot of places that just have goats and they don't use the manure for stuff. I mean, but it's something to consider if you are going to be using your barn cleanouts in the way that really homesteads are kind of set up to use this circular system. Food goes in, poop comes out, and it fertilizes the food, you know? It's this circular system, and that's what we'd like to support, and I don't want things like mercury entering that system. So am I okay with what happened to Talia? No. But it's one of those situations where you feel kind of stuck. You kind of have to choose the lesser of two evils. And I think that that may be relative to the person and your situation. We use our barn cleanouts here in our gardens, and our gardens feed our family. They feed the rest of the farm. And so compromising what goes into that system, it's not what I want to do. So yeah, that's the update. That's the final update on Talia. And now we know. And if I see something like that again, I think I'll be quicker to treat with something like the CD antitoxin and penicillin. The first two antibiotics that she had, Baytril and Exceed, they don't really work for Clostridial bacteria, and even penicillin has some resistance. And she had 5 full days of penicillin and it still was alive and in her gut. So was E. coli at the time of her death. So maybe there's a little bit of drug resistance going on there. But we'll keep doing what we can and change what we can and keep moving forward.